In post-apocalyptic Korea, a delivery man does vigilante work at night in order to stop a greedy corporation from taking advantage of desperate refugees. 40 years ago, a great disaster befell the planet as a comet crashed, destroying Earth's surface and terminating most living creatures. This calamity dramatically affected the Korean peninsula, cutting its population to 1%. Aside from the land turning into a barren desert, the air became contaminated, making oxygen an expensive and limited resource. Due to the comet bringing forth a foreign element called oxyanium, the only way to purify the atmosphere of this toxin is through an air core, owned by the Chonmyong group, which converts oxyanium to oxygen. To regain a semblance of order amongst the people, a drastic change in the social system was established, and people were segregated into 3 different districts: General, Special, and Core. The Core district is the highest, while General district is the lowest. The government places a QR code on each individual to identify and assign which district one must belong to. Outside these so-called districts are the refugees, the outcasts of society. Under the New World Order came the prevalence of delivery men, also known as knights. They are tasked to transport supplies and resources to the citizens within a time limit, while dealing with the dangers of nature and plundering thieves called hunters. As a refugee, the only means to thrive is to be a delivery man, but becoming one is no easy feat. Far beyond the district's protective barrier, Yoon Sa-wol stands face to face against a gang while 3 of his friends, Dum Dum, Dummy, and Useless, wait in the safety of their car. As Sa-wol screams and charges at his enemies, the boy beats them up in wild dog style despite the gang outnumbering him. Meanwhile, his friends cheer him on and call him a future delivery man. Elsewhere, a black truck traverses the dusty road as it enters the 5th gate to deliver air supply to the customer Mr. Shin. Upon entering the sealed apartment with a QR code, Delivery Man 5-8 replaces the empty oxygen canisters in the elderly man's home. To pay for the oxygen supply, the older man raises his hand with a QR code, allowing 5-8 to scan it. Then, the delivery man receives a distress text, and his expression hardens. Later, hunters are beating up a newbie delivery man 5-7. The criminals steal his oxygen cargo. Then the hunter's leader tries to chop the man's hand off to take his QR code. Suddenly, a truck arrives just in time to stop the sadistic act. After seeing 5-8, the hunters put their guard up, aware of the delivery man's reputation. The leader warns 5-8 that he'll shoot if he comes closer, but 5-8 handily beats them up one by one. The leader tries to escape, but 5-8 hits him with a bat, knocking the man off the motorcycle. With a gun in his hand, 5-8 warns the hunter that he won't show mercy if he ever catches the thief again. Then, the knight asks 5-7 if he's alright, and helps him return to their district. Meanwhile, Sol-ah is ordering through the house monitor for an oxygen replacement. She looks into the dining room to see that Sa-wol hasn't eaten his meal, making the girl grumble in annoyance. That night, Sa-wol slowly walks the general district streets as the officers walk by. He witnesses them arrest a woman for illegally harboring a refugee child. Sneaking in through a secret door, the boy gets accosted by Sol-ah. They brawl in the dining area while Sol-ah watches them in annoyance, having seen it many times. After seeing his bag, the older woman realizes he snuck out again and warns him that it's a refugee crackdown period. The boy explains that he's been training to be a delivery man. Sol-ah tries to back him up by telling her big sister she thinks he can succeed, but gets scolded instead. Sol-ah tells him to stay low, as she promised to find a way to register him in the district. However, the boy says he knows it's difficult for her, even if she's a major in the Defense Intelligence Department. He notes that being a delivery man is his only chance. However, the major already has her mind set and grounds him for 15 days, much to the lad's horror. Elsewhere, 5-8 receives a text from an unknown sender to meet up at Gate 8 at 5 p.m. The next day, a trail of vehicles returns to the central city as it passes a hunter-infested area. In the car is Ryo-suk, the heir to the Chonmyong Group, the company responsible for building the Air Corps and the districts. He gazes upon the refugees with intense disgust, deeming them worthless. The vehicles enter a dome building where the Special and Core districts are, which surprisingly have a clear sky, clean air, and greenery. Then they finally reach an enormous building where Che Ji-kyung, the South Korean president, and Ryu Jae-jin, the chairman of Chonmyong and Ryo-suk's father, are having a conference. conference. The two leaders discuss the mental health of the special district citizens, disappointing the chairman regarding his city design's many issues. However, the president reassures him that without him, they wouldn't have a haven, nor the construction of District A. In the middle conversation, Sok enters the room and greets them both. Then the chairman asks his heir why the construction is delayed and why he hasn't sent any information to the government. However, Sok points out that he must report to his father first. His answer displeases Jae-jin, so the man apologizes. To break the tension, the president asks Sok when District A will be ready, to which the man answers soon. After Ji-kyung leaves, the older man asks his son why he oppresses the administration. The man relays his hatred for the government meddling with their plans. However, his father reminds him that he doesn't own Chonmyong, making Sok grimace. At the general district, So-la finds that Sa-wol has escaped yet again. The boy visits Grandpa and his friends and invites them to cause trouble, making the older man smirk at their silliness. Later, they all planned a slow down sign on the roadside while waiting for a delivery truck to pass. As planned, 5-8's truck automatically slows down to 30 kilometers per hour, and they all jump on the vehicle. However, the knight catches them in the act after seeing them on his camera. The man smirks and starts driving wildly to shake them off. They fall off the vehicle one by one, except for Sa-wol. He enters through the window and jumps into the passenger seat. Excited, the boy asks the man if he's the legendary 5-8, and then introduces himself before inviting the man for a duel. Bemused, 5-8 easily pushes the teen out of the truck, and Sa-wol marvels at how strong his idol is. Later, 5-8 drives through the sandstorm and finally reaches the ominous wall of District A Gate 8. However, time has passed from the designated meetup, and the delivery man suspects the mission has failed. He then spies on trucks dragging the Air Corps into the restricted area. At the District A gate, Major So-la and her men arrive due to the reported armed protesters, yet the head guard stops their entry, stating that the guard force has already handled the problem. He even hinders them from getting information regarding the assets, annoying the major. Heading back, So-la finds the matter strange as the situation indicates that the Chonmyong group is hiding something. On their way, they stumble upon a delivery man's truck, and they quickly investigate. Seconds later, 5-8 sees the military surrounding his truck. Major So-la interrogates him about his presence in the restricted area. The delivery man answers the questions smoothly, telling them he got lost in the sandstorm. With no evidence and his authentic QR code, the military let him go. Meanwhile, Sa-wol returns from his adventure, and So-la tricks and locks him in his room. The boy tries to negotiate with her, but she reminds him that he never honors his promises. With no other choice, the boy accepts his situation with a heavy heart. In the labor market, 5-8 wanders the crowded street, dashes over to an unconscious girl and connects her mask to an oxygen tank. He notices the book about becoming a delivery man in her arms. The sickly child happily tells him she wishes to be like the legendary 5-8 because he helps the refugees by distributing oxygen and necessities. Suddenly, the Scarface informant calls for him and they discuss the failed attempt to delay the construction at District A. This failure indicates that the informant must infiltrate the restricted area for more information. Simultaneously, a group of delivery men gives the refugees a truck full of supplies and helps those who need medical attention. All these members gather to follow 5-8 as they traverse the dusty road with purpose in their every step. In the Jung residence, Sa-wol is trying to beat 5-8's AI but loses poorly. So-la comments about him constantly failing. When the doorbell sounds out, the teen welcomes the delivery man, but states that he isn't 5-7, their usual guy. However, she soon realizes that the man in front of her is the famous 5-8, so she happily asks for a picture. Hearing the commotion, Sa-wol peeps through the monitor to see his idol, making the boy nervous. So-la bids her idol goodbye as she giggles and tiptoes to the living room. So-la exclaims that 5-8 is cooler than Sa-wol, unaware that men are cutting the security camera's wires and breaking into the house. Then, So-la hears the front door opening and screams in fear as she sees armed men. They try injecting a substance into the teen, while Sa-wol tries to break out of the room. Hearing him, one of the men shoots his door. The boy kicks it open and starts fighting off the armed men. As the boy pushes off one enemy and shoots at another, he tries to pull So-la away but is almost hit by the raining bullets. In defense, Sa-wol fires back, yet his effort is all in vain as his best friend gets shot, ending her life. Unable to comprehend that So-la has perished, the boy begins to hyperventilate, not noticing the man behind him who shoots him in the head. Outside, 5-8 hears a gunshot and sees 5-7 scrambling away in fear. The delivery man immediately investigates the noise and encounters a man reporting that their target had perished. 5-8 immediately slays the armed man and enters the home. 5-8 sees a picture of the major and the victim and deduces that they're related. Searching for clues, the man notices that the armed men have strange tattoos on their napes and immediately reports the incident to the authorities. Then he sees that Sawol is still alive and remembers that he's the teen who tried to challenge him. He takes him away to his apartment and calls 4-1 for help. Afterward, Sola arrives at the scene and sees her younger sister's lifeless body. Controlling her emotions, she calls Sergeant Lee to initiate the investigation. Using a device, they scan the crime scene to produce a simulation and theorize a possible link to the kidnapping happening in the general district. As her men leave, Sola remembers how young Sula happily cared for the wounded Sawol when she first took him home. At 5-8's place, Sawol wakes up from his slumber after 4-1 patched him up. As he gets up, he suffers from a pounding headache and tries to run away. The delivery men hold him down and inject him with a sleep-inducing medication to prevent the boy from further injuring himself. As 4-1 is about to leave, she gives 5-8 the bullet she removed from Sawol, mentioning how his skull somehow stopped the bullet from piercing his brain. The man returns to the boy's side and sees the metal bone peeking out from his wound, and he wonders if the rumors are true. Afterward, Sula watches her sister's cremation as she silently cries in sorrow and pain. Later, she visits Grandpa in the refugee district to discuss what happened. After some time, the investigation team invites 5-8 to take his statement regarding the incident. Sula informs him that the kidnappings are done by cutting off the cameras and stealing the memory chips by the doors. To be able to do this crime, the criminals have someone with authority to open apartments, a subtle accusation on 5-8. However, the delivery man is able to answer her questions in a condescending but accurate way. He gives her a clue regarding Sawol as he notes that he had an urgent delivery and where that delivered item was sent, then leaves after she realizes the hint. Sula remembers how she met Sawol as she once was part of the military force that slew the rebels. She saved him by covering his body and returning to his side after the raid. Presently, the woman returns home to see Sawol lingering in her sister's room, flipping through pictures of his best friend. Later, the boy apologizes to her for surviving alone, yet Sula tells him she's happy he's alive. Before the boy leaves, the woman gives him a necklace containing Sula's ashes as she wants him to protect her memory, causing the boy to cry in sorrow as he thanks her for everything. Meanwhile, Useless, Dum-Dum, and Dummy search for their friend to no avail. Then, Useless realizes how guilty the boy must have felt for what happened to Sula and believes he knows what Sawol plans to do. They then catch him getting into a gang fight, letting the men beat him unconscious. Elsewhere, 5-8 and the informant watch the Chonmyong men recruit workers with a promise of a year's supply of food and oxygen. The rebels deduce that the enemies are desperate to finish the construction of District A. After taking the unconscious Sawol back to Grandpa's house, his friends worry about his condition and take turns caring for him. In the core district, Director O and his cousin 5-7 meet with Sok regarding his task. However, the timid delivery man expresses his reluctance in participating in the illegal operations, not wanting to be the key in the kidnappings. Shuddering, 5-7 asks if the company is experimenting on the abducted people. He requests removal from his position, making Director O berate his spineless cousin. Sok tells him that the operation is about saving lives and offers the delivery man a chance to live in the core district after one last mission. The heir reminds him of the device in his nape to further convince him, implying that 5-7's life is in his hands. Meanwhile, 5-8 and his fellow delivery men gather more information regarding the kidnapping incidents. They discover that the culprits were traveling via a vehicle without a license plate and needed to capture one to extract valuable information. Devising a plan, they ask a boy to act as bait and get kidnapped, while they plant a tracking device on the car, promising they'll rescue him later. Soon, the kidnappers take the boy to an abandoned building. The delivery men, excluding 5-7, sneak in to take down the criminals. However, the rescuers are stunned by the horrible scene of a room full of abducted children. They immediately transfer the victims into a safe place, hoping to return them to their families. The next day, Sawol finally wakes up from his coma, and Useless tries to comfort his friend from his deep sorrow. At the Chonmyong building, Jae-jin asks his son about the disturbance in District A and the General District, which Sok shrugs off as insignificant. However, the chairman doesn't accept his son's words and says he doesn't trust Sok. His belief is to create a place to save people's lives, and his work has been lacking, making Sok retort that his father's plan for the future is accurate. Sighing, the chairman opens the monitor showing people in different areas and asks his son what he sees. In response, Sok tells him that he only sees stupid people living in the world created by his father, likening them to a parasite that feeds off the chairman's hard work. Sok promises his father that he'll attain his acknowledgement someday. In the refugee district, Grandpa advises the devastated Sa-wol that his grief will slowly heal through time. However, Sa-wol fears forgetting Su-la, making the older man empathize with the teen. Afterward, Sok is in a clinical room attached to a dialysis machine with a grieving expression as he remembers how his father accused him of becoming crazy. Sok agreed with the chairman's sentiment because he admits that he's losing his mind due to his illness. The next day, Grandpa, in his underground garden, checks on the soil components from every district when 5-8 visits him with a soil sample from District A. Then the delivery man tells Grandpa about Sa-wol's mutation, showing the bullet that bounced off his skull. Grandpa reveals that the lad's father worked in an oxyanium mine but didn't know of his transformation. 5-8 takes this as a clue that the miner's children were exposed to radioactive components, deducing that the criminals are trying to find mutants. Seeing the situation, Grandpa tells 5-8 that the boy isn't ready to face the truth, as Sa-wol's still in his current emotional state. At the Defense Intelligence Headquarters, Sola's team has been removed from the kidnapping case because the government sees her close relationship with the victim as a hindrance. However, the team had backed up all the files to continue their own investigation and only requested an extended vacation in exchange. Grateful, Sola thanks her team when she gets triggered by the word vacation and searches for delivery men that took leaves at the time of every incident, ultimately tracing back to 5-7. At the delivery station, 5-8 has returned from his task when he hears a choking sound inside a truck. He investigates and sees 5-7 trying to end his life. The man immediately cuts the rope, saving his colleague's life. Elsewhere, Director O reports to Sok that 5-7 didn't come to their meeting place, so the heir decides to remove the delivery man from his plan despite his cousin's plea. Concurrently, 5-8 interrogates the sobbing man who incoherently says they were experimenting on the abducted people. But before he can elaborate further, Sok triggers the implant in his nape, killing 5-7. In Sok's office, he plans to conduct an event to distract the general public while they finish their plans, smirking evilly. The next day, the government scatters flyers to conduct a contest for an open delivery man position, to the refugees' excitement. Among the crowd, Useless picks up one flyer and runs back home to show Sa-wol. Seeing the announcement, the depressed boy finds renewed motivation. Standing on the dusty road, he waits fearlessly for 5-8, who smirks upon seeing the teen. Testing the lad, the man increases his truck's speed as he drives toward the determined Sa-wol.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.